really what we are living in now is we need to recognize that this is the reality. This is not surreal.
Right.
This is real. This is not the abnormal. This is the normal. Like, this is the world that we now live in. We live in a world in which the President of the United States is able to get anyone in the country who he wants indicted to be investigated by the FBI, to be pursued, perhaps have their house raided, and if they can find a bare minimum of a grand jury quorum anywhere, they will get indicted. And the days of the Department of Justice and the rules that everyone keeps citing to me, well, the rules of this, the rules of that, those rules, that rule book is gone. Okay, those rules are gone. This is a president who believes he controls the Department of Justice and he decides who's guilty, who's innocent, who gets indicted, and who gets prosecuted. And if we don't all wake up to that, then we're going to keep having this conversation about who checked what box on a form. Nothing about who checked what box on a form is what this case is about. Yeah, and if I can just add one thing, Simone says this is not over. Like, this has just begun.
Right.
Okay? Like, we were talking about the deployment of the military in Los Angeles, and there was a lot of public attention and outrage. And then it came to Washington, D.C., and there was a lot less. And then in Portland, there's been less. In Chicago, it's even less.
Just as they hoped.
And before you know it, there will be troops in every city trying to intimidate people. And, there has been a lot of attention about James Comey, understandably, and a lot about AG James, and for good reasons. But, when we start to get 6, 7, 10, 50 people deep into this process, shows like this, they'll cover them, but we can't let this become the norm. We can't let people stop standing up and calling this out when it happens.
What is happening?
They're absolutely panicking on MSNBC. That was the ultra repulsive Mark Elias, the architect of the Russian collusion hoax on MSNBC, absolutely losing it. He knows this is just the beginning. He knows that these indictments are just the tip of the iceberg. What you just saw there is what happens when corrupt prosecutors become the objects of prosecution. They literally panic. They don't know what to do. When those who turn the justice system into a political weapon are having that very system turned right back on them, they scatter like a bunch of cockroaches and the turning on of the light. We're going to see how the James Comey and the Letitia James indictments are just the beginning. And the panicking legacy media, as you saw there, is openly admitting it. The Russian collusion class, the swamp establishment that sought to destroy President Trump, and the MAGA movement are now officially in the crosshairs. If you thought accountability would never come, buckle up. In fact, butter the popcorn. This chapter is just beginning. Greetings, everyone. It is a live stream Friday. I am your host, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you make sense of the madness, the panicked madness as the radical left desperately tries to stop the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age that you're making happen all over the world. So if you want a front row seat on how you are changing the world in ways you never even imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss a single episode. As always, we got a jam-packed show for you today in our live stream Friday. Our super chats are up, so feel free to send in your comments or questions. It'll be my privilege to read them and answer them during this live stream. Also, I do want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video. That's our very good friends over at Block Trust IRA. Now, gang, if you have yet to get into the crypto game, what are you waiting for? This is it. This is your best opportunity you're ever going to get. If you don't know, the crypto revolution that's happening right now as we speak, it's just getting underway, and it represents the single largest wealth transfer in American history. Over 80,000 new millionaires were created last year because of crypto. But of course, the turnoff is its volatility. I get, especially if you're a retiree, the extreme highs are great. The 30, 40, 50% returns, you can't beat them. But what about the equally extreme lows, right? Well, guess what? Your experience of that volatility is now officially a thing of the past. Meet Block Trust IRA. They have a super AI system that Bitcoin Magazine has named the #1 crypto technology platform in the world among 1,500 global competitors. And what that super AI does is it works 24/7 to analyze global market data, and it predicts with uncanny accuracy the highs and the lows of crypto volatility. So Block Trust IRA then sells at the highs and then buys up again at the lows, which mitigates the volatility, all the while you stand and make incredible gains. That's why I'm a proud client of Block Trust IRA. I've got my own account with them, and I can honestly say, gang, I love them, and I know you will too. So if you've never gotten into the crypto game yet, let Block Trust IRA ease you on in. Click on that link below right now, or visit turleytalkscrypto.com and find out how they can help you join the Trump financial revolution that's finally giving forgotten Americans access to the greatest crypto wealth opportunity in history. And for a limited time, they're actually offering my viewers up to $2,500 in bonus crypto when you open up an account with them. It's amazing. So don't wait on this. Visit turleytalkscrypto.com. That's turleytalkscrypto.com. All right, let's dive right in here. Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, who actually campaigned on the Banana Republic slogan of getting Trump. She literally campaigned on weaponizing the justice system to take down the Republican nominee for president of the United States. That ultra woke lunatic has now been officially indicted by a federal grand jury in Virginia on bank fraud and making false statements to a financial institution tied to a 2023 mortgage on her Norfolk, Virginia property. Prosecutors allege that James lied about and misrepresented the use and status of her property to secure better loan terms. Tish James' response to the indictment was absolutely priceless.
And a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system. He is forcing federal law enforcement agencies to do his bidding, all because I did my job as the New York State Attorney General. These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost. The president's actions are a grave violation of our constitutional order and have drawn sharp criticism from members of both parties. His decision to fire a United States attorney who refused to bring charges against me and replace them with someone who is blindly loyal not to the law, but to the president is antithetical to the bedrock principles of our country.
Bedrock principles of our country that you hate so much and that you want to overturn, being a Marxist revolutionary. I mean, cry me a river. That's just textbook psychopathic narcissism. She projects onto others the very sin she commits and then plays the victim. She is a textbook psychopath. She's using an old playbook that all left-wing psychopaths use: scapegoat others while playing the victim. Scapegoat others, projecting your own sins upon them, and then you play the victim in the process. The problem's that playbook doesn't work anymore. Not in the anti-woke age of Trump. Nobody's buying it. Now, James is set to appear in court later this month, and the indictment details are frankly pretty devastating. We're talking alleged bank fraud, alleged false statements, and a specific pattern tied to the falsification of residency representations and rental status. So if you don't know, back in 2023, James bought a Norfolk, Virginia property, and then she turned around and falsely declared that it was her primary residence. Now, the reason why that is an objectively false statement is because she is required by law to live in New York as Attorney General. That is where her primary residence must be. However, as it turns out, by declaring her Virginia home to be her primary residence, she would get better mortgage rates. So bottom line, she declared her secondary home to be her primary home for her own personal gain. But it actually gets worse than that, because There's a repeated pattern of behavior here. She's also facing scrutiny over repeatedly lying about a Brooklyn rental property that she owns. It's a 5-family unit Brooklyn property that she apparently has been listing as having only 4 units. And she's been doing that reportedly for the last 2 decades. And again, listing it as a 4-unit rather than a 5-unit property enables her to qualify for better loan terms. 4 units is residential property, whereas 5 or more units is classified as commercial property. So this allowed her to get conforming loans with better interest rates reserved for smaller properties. And then, as if things could not get worse, we're now finding out that in 1983, apparently James and her father signed mortgage documents claiming to be husband and wife to meet lending requirements. Yeah, you heard that. I'm not talking Ilhan Omar here, all right? I'm talking Letitia James and her father claiming to be husband and wife to secure better lending opportunities. So all of this suggests textbook mortgage fraud taking place repeatedly over years. So if convicted, the maximum exposure is pretty steep. We're talking 30 years in prison, very large fines per count. And I frankly don't expect Letitia James' lame attempt at playing the victim to garner that much sympathy, and neither does the one and only Scott Jennings over at CNN.
Constitutional original.
Here's what I think. If Democrats like Slotkin are going to come out today and whine about selective prosecutions over Tish James, her entire career is built on the selective prosecution of one man. Now, I also believe what Elliot said. There's a process here. Everybody gets their day in court. Obviously, a grand jury saw enough evidence to bring charges. We don't know what they are, but a grand jury looked at this and says, okay, there's something here. She gets to go to court just like Comey, just like anyone else. But to me, it's just not going to fly to boo-hoo over selective prosecutions on this particular person who promised in her campaigns, who went after him on things, as Jonah said, that had no business ever happening, if not but for the man's last name being Trump.
Now, if you don't know what Scott is talking about there, here is Tush James, in her own words, just a few short years ago, promising the clapping seals in her New York audience that she was going to take President Trump down.
I will be honored when I walk into that courtroom on October 2nd. Well, my role is civil. But I will come back before you soon with a check for $250 million. And to let you know that he is no longer allowed to do business in the state of New York. Yeah, we've got a special charge to show up and stand up for one another.
So now those feckless clapping seals, who are those demonic Democrats, who are actually celebrating the literal excommunication of a man from both a city and a state that he helped build over his life. He's done more. His pinky has done more to improve the lives of millions of people than all of those people combined in that room. They are now getting a very bitter taste of their own medicine. They are learning the hard way the very definition of karma is a bitch. You weaponized the legal system against your political opponents. You clapped like seals when the attorney general that you elected in that campaign on getting Trump, wait a minute now. We have to see if there's been a crime committed, and then we have to connect the person to the crime. No, she was indicting the person and just trying to invent and fabricate a crime. It's Banana Republic, third world stuff. You weaponize the legal system against your political opponents that way. You clap like pathetic seals in the midst of it, and now it's coming back to bite your effing asses. That's why you're all flipped out right now. You're all flipped out because you are humiliated. You have egg on your face. It's not, you don't give a rip about Letitia James. They don't care about Letitia James. They'll just replace her with another wacko lib. They don't care about her. They don't care about Comey. They don't care about any of these people. They'll replace them in a heartbeat. It doesn't matter. What they care about is the fact that their entire world is being dismantled right before their very eyes, using the very weapons they tried to use to destroy Trump and the MAGA movement. And by the way, to add insult to injury, you do know that a New York appeals court recently blew apart Letitia James' entire case against President Trump. Did you know that? The appellate court threw out her entire $527 million fraud penalty against Trump because he didn't commit it. This was back in September, just weeks ago. It was a 5-judge panel of New York's appellate division. They unanimously declared Letitia James' massive penalty against Trump an excessive fine that violated the 8th Amendment. Now, that again, I want you to note, unanimously. That was a unanimous appellate decision. Even New York's liberal judges couldn't stomach James's lawfare abuse. So she's crashing and burning all over the place. Her lawfare against President Trump has failed miserably. And now she herself is being indicted, ironically, for the very crime she accused Trump of committing: mortgage fraud. You literally cannot make this stuff up. Now, I got to say that I think we are more or less in the third stage of the dismantling of the administrative state and the deep state. We are now officially in the third stage. This is the stage we've all been waiting for. So the first stage was the formal dismantling. So this is where you were seeing the doging of all these departments, particularly the USAID, which was more or less nothing more than a slush fund. It was literally a money laundering front for left-wing causes all around the world, but here in the United States as well. It's not coincidental that Act Blue immediately almost went defunct after they shut down USAID. So that was the first stage. It was this, as it were, dismantling stage or defunding stage, where they began doging the administrative state and the deep state. But then there was a second stage, and that was basically the recovery of the renewal stage of executive power. So what had happened over the last 7 or 8 decades is that from FDR onward, the deep state, the administrative state, rose up, and Washington, D.C. began to be governed both domestically and internationally by unelected bureaucrats. And so what Trump had to do, and those unelected bureaucrats basically took the place of the executive power of the president. They all came under executive authority, ironically enough. But up until that point, it was almost impossible, given the state of the Supreme Court during these last several decades. It was virtually impossible for the president to reawaken, as it were, his executive power granted to him by the Constitution, which is incredibly formidable. I mean, he does have ultimate decision-making authority over the whole of the executive branch, under which the whole of the administrative deep state comes. And so what President Trump had to do in the second phase is get to reawaken that executive power. And so all this talk about him being a dictator and so forth, which is hilarious because dictators don't allow you to criticize them in public like that. But regardless of their performative contradictions, but regardless, all of that criticism is actually nothing less than an acknowledgement that Trump is reawakening the very formidable power given to him by Article 2 of the Constitution. Now, it's a limited power in that it's limited to his duration. It's limited to his tenure. The next president could come in and undo everything he's done. But if you want swift, fast, decisive action, the power granted to the executive branch is precisely that. Now, it can become permanent, but then it has to go through the slow molasses deliberative process of Article 1 in the Constitution, and that's the legislative branch. And courts can also come in and limit the president's power here or there, but generally that's going to be the Supreme Court. It's not going to be these federal courts, these narcissists, left-wing lunatics disguised as federal judges issuing nationwide injunctions. Those days are over. I mean, they're issuing them, but Trump isn't paying any attention to it anymore because the Supreme Court's basically given them green light to ignore it. So the first stage was the defunding or the dismantling of the deep state. The second stage is Trump's recovering of executive power so he can hire and fire as he sees fit. Now we're in the third stage, and that third stage is the indictment stage. This is the stage we've all been waiting for. We've been waiting for the perp walks. We've been waiting for them in handcuffs. We've been waiting for them sitting in courtrooms. That's the stage we're seeing happen right now. We've been waiting patiently. Even Trump, you saw that a couple of weeks ago when he sent out a Truth Social post excoriating Pam Bondi. Yo, you're taking too long here. Now, we now know that the statute of limitations was coming up with James Comey within just a few days. And then he sent out a notice, just literally an hour later going, I think Pam's doing a great job. In other words, she got on the phone with him and said, Mr. President, we've got all the indictments lined up. We're starting with Comey, then we're going to go to with Letitia James, and on and on and on. So don't you worry. We're just making sure we assemble the best possible case against them, because it's an uphill battle if they're inside the Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. court system. Those juries are a bunch of left-wing lunatics. It's going to be very, very hard to actually convict them. So they want to make sure their cases are ironclad to the extent that they're being tried in those court systems. So Comey and James, as it turns out, are just the tip of the indictment iceberg in this third stage. We are literally witnessing what is but the appetizers, and I got the proof on that, the appetizers in the MAGA uprising against these corrupt Democrats. Wait until you see who's next in line for indictments. This is going to absolutely blow you away. But first, gang, if you are just joining us, our super chats are up, so feel free to send in your comments and questions. I'll be happy to answer them on our live stream here. Also, this is a good time to remember that every one of us has to make sure that we take the steps necessary to protect ourselves and our loved ones online. And that actually begins with your home title. Now, if you're a homeowner like me, you got to ask yourself, when's the last time you checked on your home title? That's the legal proof that you own your house. Well, if you're like me, the answer is never. Well, the problem with that is that in today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles online, and your equity is the target. So it works like this. Criminals forge your signature on one document. They use a fake notary stamp. They use a folk notary, right? A fake notary stamp. Then they pay a small fee with your county, and that's it. Boom. That's it. I mean, your home title's gone. It's been transferred out of your name. And then what they do is they take out all these loans using your home's equity. Sometimes they sell your property, and you won't even know it's happened until you get collection notices or foreclosure notices. That's why you need to stop what you're doing right now, and see if you've already been a victim. Use promo code TurleyTalks by clicking on the link below, or go to HometitleLock.com, and you can find out if your title is still in your name. You'll get also a free title history report, plus a free 14-day trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud should happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. So go to HometitleLock.com right now. Use promo code TurleyTalks. That's all one word. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code TurleyTalks. All right, gang. As promised, here is MAGA attorney Mike Davis on the War Room. Check out what he had to say.
They went after our side for nonsense. They went after our side for non-crimes. They politicized and weaponized intel agencies and law enforcement with made-up charges that eventually got kicked by the Supreme Court. And it wasn't just Trump and his top aides like you, Bannon and Navarro and Jeff Clark. You guys have the wherewithal to fight this. They went after parents, Christians, protesters on January 6th. They hunted them for years. So these lawfare Democrats, I would say, we are just getting warmed up. James Comey and Big Tish James are just the appetizers. Hearty appetizers, but they are just the appetizers. Just wait till we get to the main course.
I love Steve Bannon. I mean, this is a guy who spent months in prison. He's just sitting back laughing. I mean, he's got to be the most satisfied Schadenfreude fellow on the planet right now. And what Mike Davis said there is absolutely right. These are factual charges, not the fabricated nonsense, the literally invented law that these radical left-wing liberals disguised as attorneys and prosecutors had to use or to come up with to inflict on Trump. So the legacy media, I mean, they were literally doing cartwheels trying to defend these fabricated charges. They were finding every left-wing lunatic out there to come on in and do their best to gaslight the American people that somehow these Alvin Bragg charges, Letitia James charges, or these Smith charges are all somehow legit charges. They're literally invented. They're literally fabricated solely to get this man. Now you've got actual factual charges. You got factual charges with Comey. You got factual charges with Letitia James. These are absolutely objective charges. And what's the same legacy media doing? What's the same legacy media doing? They are doing cartwheels to turn around and say, oh, it's there's no big deal to this. There's no anybody could check the wrong box on their mortgage application. Anyone can do it. That's literally what they were saying on CNN. Everybody commits this mortgage fraud. If Letitia James is guilty, then we're all guilty. Oh, really? Are you? Maybe we'll have to look at your mortgage applications as well. It's absurd. They cheer-led frauds, and they're doing everything they can to gaslight facts. But as Mike Davis is saying there, this is just the appetizer. It's just the appetizer. Who's next? Well, we're now getting word that it's none other than John Bolton. He's the next one in line to be indicted. It's being widely reported that prosecutors in Maryland are indeed expected to bring criminal charges in the coming days over Bolton's alleged mishandling of classified national defense information. A probe that was actually opened up, if you don't know, 5 years ago around the publishing of his book, where he was warned that he was actually publishing compromising national security secrets, but he went ahead and did it anyway. So it was a probe that was opened up 5 years ago, but it was shut down by the Biden Justice Department. Again, the Biden Injustice Department, again, presumably is all part of the other side of their weaponized legalism. So they looked the other way when it came to their friends while legally punishing and literally fabricating legal charges on their enemies. So if you recall, back on August 22nd, I mean, it hasn't even been 2 months, the FBI searched Bolton's home and office, and they have since revealed that they found a treasure trove of classified materials that would make any security expert's hair stand on end. They reportedly found a number of documents marked secret. So we're talking travel memo documents with pages carrying the highest level restricted classification. They found a number of documents marked confidential, detailing secrets about weapons of mass destruction. Yes, you heard that right. John Bolton reportedly had classified documents about WMDs just sitting in his office. The FBI specifically noted that these were marked as classified and dealt with some of the most sensitive national security matters imaginable. There were a number of UN mission documents labeled confidential, and this involved multiple files related to the U.S. mission to the United Nations containing very sensitive diplomatic communications that could damage relations with international partners. There were reportedly a number of strategic communication materials marked confidential, and these are reportedly documents related to the federal government's strategic communications. So essentially classified information about how the U.S. government coordinates its messaging on sensitive topics. And then finally, the FBI noted that at least one confidential heading was completely redacted from their public inventory, meaning there are classified documents so sensitive they can't even reveal what they're about. And apparently Bolton had that in his possession. Now, the search warrant for Bolton indicates agents were investigating two fundamental felony violations. So first, you have the conspiracy to gather, transmit, or even lose defense information under the Espionage Act. And then secondly, the unauthorized retention of classified documents. In addition, the FBI confiscated computers, electronic devices that could contain digital copies of sensitive information inside Bolton's home as well. So it's not just the hard copies that they're looking for. And that dual location search, that's key. So searching both his home and his DC office, that's key because it shows that the Justice Department believes Bolton was systematically retaining classified materials across multiple locations. So it's a pattern that suggests intentional misconduct rather than just some accidental retention. Oops, I brought home a wrong box kind of thing. So John Bolton looks like he's the next one up on the indictment train, as it were, but he is hardly alone. Word on the street is that the ultra-repulsive California Senator Adam Schiff is facing an active federal investigation in Maryland over alleged mortgage and occupancy misrepresentations spanning years. Again, this is almost a carbon copy of what Letitia James is getting indicted over. It all started when Fannie Mae's Financial Crimes Division actually caught Schiff in what they're calling a sustained pattern of possible occupancy misrepresentation. So in other words, easy peasy here. He's being accused of lying and lying repeatedly on mortgage documents. Adam Schiff lie? Oh, can't believe it. You almost think he would get censured by Congress for doing something like that. But yes, he's being accused of repeatedly lying on mortgage documents for over a decade to more or less basically steal money from hardworking Americans. So the smoking gun here is that in 2011, Schiff signed an affidavit under oath declaring that his Montgomery County, Maryland home was his primary residence. But at the exact same time, he was also claiming on other documents that his Burbank, California condo was his primary residence. And he actually, he did that during his Senate campaign. Now, why does this matter? Because by falsely claiming the Maryland property as his primary home, Schiff, of course, ended up getting a sweetheart mortgage rate that saved him thousands of dollars. And it worked the other way as well. Schiff was also simultaneously claiming his Burbank home as his primary residence for advantageous tax purposes. So this is what's known as a dual residence scam. Apparently, it's very common among dual home owners. A dual residence scam aims to save money on both ends. Try to lower your mortgage rates in Maryland, in this case, and you try to lower your property taxes in California. And so the Federal Housing Finance Agency did an investigation, and they sent an official criminal referral to the Justice Department for potential prosecution several weeks back. And now we're getting word the DOJ has indeed launched an official investigation into virtually identical charges to that of Letitia James, now for pencil neck Schiff. And even CNN is admitting that it's just a matter of time before old pencil neck gets indicted. Here's a quick clip.
It just seems we're now just waiting on the day for Adam Schiff. and others. But I mean, it is pretty obvious here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it says in the docket, he lists 3 people, 2 of whom.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of days. That's it. The only real question now is who's next. Who's next? We got Bolton, we got Schiff. If all of this is just the appetizer, who's the main course? Could it be former CIA Director John Brennan? Former FBI Director Christopher Wray? The whole class of the collusion hoaxsters? The collusion class, as it were? Subpoenas have reportedly gone out in the Wray probe, Christopher Wray, and separate investigators are looking in on Brennan. Wray's being accused of a couple of things. He's being accused of blatantly lying before Congress about the FBI's role during J6. We now know, we have the documents. Cash and Dan Bongino have made them public. We now know that there were as many as 270 FBI agents embedded in the Capitol or on the grounds of the Capitol on J6. And Christopher Wray repeatedly testified that the FBI had no undercover employees in the protest crowds. He denied agents were embedded to incite violence. And now we have evidence to the contrary. And Wray also faces investigation for his own particular role in Operation Arctic Frost, where the FBI obtained what's called tolling data. We talked about that in an earlier video this week. Tolling data from 8 Republican senators and 1 House member between January 4th and January 7th of 2021. So they were sandwiching J6, literally trying to take senators like Lindsey Graham down. And so that tolling data included the calls they made, the call timing, the recipients, this is all on their cell phones, the duration, and even the location from where they made that call. So Wray is in serious, and of course that violates, and they did it without any kind of FISA warrant. It violates all kinds of constitutional norms. So Wray is in serious hot water. And of course, Brennan was at the very heart of the Russian collusion hoax, routinely leaking what he knew to be lies to the press. So it looks like the day of deserved retribution is finally at hand. But that said, this is not about vengeance, ultimately. This is about symmetrical justice. If civil fraud, paperwork accuracy, and classified handling of materials mattered for one man, they must matter now for all those who were accusing him. They have to matter for everyone, especially those who wielded the state against their rivals. And if Letitia James can be indicted, if Bolton can be charged, and if Schiff can face a grand jury, then we now know the old hierarchy, the double standards of rules for thee, but not for me, are officially starting to crack. This is exactly what we voted for in November, and it appears it's all just getting started. Over to you, gang. Over to you. I want to hear what you have to say. Again, if you're just joining us, make sure we have our super chats up. You could just give me your questions. I'll be happy to answer them in real time here. And as Josh assembles your questions, of course, we all have to remember Biden's debate disaster when he blurted out, we finally beat Medicare. Yeah, it's true. As Trump said, you beat it to death. Medicare touches the lives of millions of Americans. But like about everything else the government touches, it's a mess. And mistakes can cost you thousands between confusing rules and penalties, thousands of different plans. It's no wonder so many people are spending more than they need because they're stuck in the wrong plan. That's why I want to introduce you to a genuinely helpful company, Chapter. Chapter gives you personalized Medicare advice, and they actually work for you, not for the government, not big insurance. They search every plan available, even those that other agents skip. And by doing this, they save people an average of $1,100 per year, sometimes more. In fact, Chapter was able to save one couple, Joe and his wife, $1,000 every single year. Chapter's advice is completely free to my audience. No fees, no pressure, just honest help. So if you're already on Medicare or you're about to be, I cannot recommend Chapter enough. Give them a call at 919-727-1903. That's 919-727-1903 to make sure your Medicare works for you, not the insurance companies. Most people wish they had called them sooner. Again, that's 919-727-1903. All right, Josh, what do we got? What do we got? On over to you guys. All right, ROT Core, Dr. Trill, let's be honest with ourselves. Do we really think Trump was going to get the Nobel Peace Prize? I'm just as bummed as you are, but hear me out. Maybe they gave it to Maria Corina Machado as a thin veil protection, so Maduro doesn't. Look over shoulder, look over other shoulder, introduce her to the Clintons, if you caught my drift. So he doesn't order her the September 10th special. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, I bet. Yeah. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I get it. Yeah. I mean, even astonishingly, even Putin just came out and said it's a crime that Trump didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, so yeah, I kid you not. I mean, Putin, you could watch it on X, just about a minute and a half little improv that he gave, saying, I mean, if anyone on the planet deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, it's Trump. That's all the guy's trying to do, is bring about peace. Again, obviously, Putin isn't so happy with the conditions for the Ukraine-Russia conflict. But regardless, certainly what we saw with Israel and Hamas and the way he was able to marginalize both Netanyahu and Hamas, put pressure on both of them while bringing to the fore non-Hamas militias and getting them to exercise more power in that vacuum as he's sort of pushing the other two sides back. I mean, it was just absolutely brilliant. Now, in fairness, as I understand it, and I'm no fan of the Nobel Committee, but because I just think in the end they're just a bunch of liberal wackos. But apparently the deadline for submission was back in January. So now that said, they had no problem giving Obama a Nobel Peace Prize when he right after he got elected. So they gave him a new Nobel Prize back in the January or February of when he was inaugurated back in 2009. They may even gave it to him sooner. So it's kind of like, give me a break kind of thing. That was if there ever were such a thing as a DEI Nobel Prize, there it was. I mean, he was, as even Trump said, I mean, he just gave it to him just for being a Democrat, for being non-Bush. I mean, it was just insane. And they were sticking it to Bush as well, who's now ironically one of their allies. They're on the same side as the Cheneys and the Bushes and the Boltons at this point. Ironic. But I wouldn't pay any attention to it. Trump is so much bigger than some stupid, prize handed out by liberals to liberals. Franz, Dr. Steve, essential workers can be determined by the office management budget, and an executive order can be adjudicated by the court. What will we need Congress for? It's true. Generally speaking, Congress is in charge of the purse strings. They're supposed to be, the budget keepers, as it were, and they're supposed to exercise a certain level of authority, ironically, over the federal court system, which is a Article 1 legislative system that Congress came up with to help adjudicate cases. But yeah, when that gets shut down because of a government shutdown, then all of that sort of that accounting and that authority over day-to-day activities in the government, it all now goes to the OMB. It all goes to and again, I always forget it's an 1880 act or so that turned it over to the executive branch and the OMB. And a lot of people are basically asking the question, so what the hell do we need the legislative branch for then? Give me a break. Well, you still need it to make laws permanent. Again, presidents only can exercise power in accordance with EOs that are specific to their tenure, unless you vote in, say, J.D. Vance, and he'll just continue those policies. But yeah, if you want to make things permanent, it's got to go through the slow, deliberative process of Article 1. But yeah, it does make you wonder, boy, we don't really need Congress. Pat Buchanan was making that argument, if I recall, back in the 2000s, when we were just noticing, make sure you understand fully what I'm saying here. Over the 40-year span that the Democrats ran the House of Representatives, they had created rules concomitant with the administrative state that the Republicans learned to play by. So at least it was still functional. It was a functional House. So Tip O'Neill, overseeing that House, still ended up passing Reagan's budget several times, by the way, over Reagan's two terms. And then they strong-armed Bush Sr. and got him to raise taxes and all that. He didn't have anywhere near the political savvy of Trump and basically of Reagan, and basically destroyed his populist coalition that reawakened again in 2016 and most certainly in 2024. So at least it was still a functional Congress. When the Republicans took over in '94, they did amazing stuff. They were very disciplined with Gingrich, even with Bob Dole in the Senate. But by the time you got to the Bush years, Democrats just decided to go the dysfunctional route. And they basically said, if we're not in power, we're just going to shut the whole damn thing down. And so it's been dysfunctional ever since, unless the Democrats are in power when they vote in lockstep. But yeah, the legislative branch is pretty dysfunctional right now. So virtually all power is now amassing in the executive branch. And as far as I'm concerned, so be it. Mischief Managed. Do you think we will ever see the lying media and station owners held accountable? Love you, Dr. Steve. I love you too, my friend. I doubt it. I mean, outside of Trump suing him and them being forced to pay tens of millions of dollars to Trump's presidential library, we're gonna have, think about it, we're gonna have entire wings of that library dedicated to fake news media that the fake news media had to pay for. I definitely think that's the way to handle it. I definitely think putting pressure on the corporate higher ups that actually own ABC, NBC, CNN, MSNBC has been working. They are willing to pay those big figures in order to stop and bring the lawsuits to an end. And they've been, in fairness, firing a lot of their talent. I mean, CNN literally has no talent anymore. Trump was pointing that out. For right or for wrong, good or bad, at least they had a pretty impressive all-star lineup with Cuomo and with Don Lemon and with Jim Acosta, and they had a pretty good, at least they were entertaining. People tuned in. They're all gone. They've all been fired. They're literally gone. So and MSNBC, of course, seen Joy Reid shown the door. It's just a matter of time before they show the door to Rachel Maddow. So that's the way to go. It's just destroy them through the market. And the market is doing that because we're living in a network society. And the network society means that because of the internet, we now all have access to the same information that the legacy media during the 20th century had a monopoly over. They had a privileged access to. We have the same access, so we're able to bypass the legacy media to get that information. We're able to bypass them the same way, texting and email bypasses the post office. But even worse, now we get to fact check them. since we have access to the same information. So we see, for example, these two indictments. We see the indictments, sets of indictments. We see the indictments of Trump, and we see and recognize, based on having same access to the same information, that these are fabricated charges. These are literally made up charges designed specifically for bringing down a man. This is the exact opposite of what the rule of law is. And then we go and turn on CNN and MSNBC and ABC, and they're all telling us, oh, this is the rule of law. Nobody's above the law. These are perfectly legitimate charges. And so we could see that they're lying. And so we get to fact check them in real time. And now the latest Gallup poll shows the legacy media's trust is at a historic low as we speak, as it ought to be. So I think that's going to kill him. And if that's going to, that's what we want. We just want him destroyed. Whether you can throw him in jail and indict him and so on, that's no, you can hold him, civilly accountable, like Trump is doing in terms of the way, for example, CBS blatantly interfered in the election with that, doctoring, literally changing Kamala's disastrous answer on the Israeli-Hamas conflict. It was such a objectively bad answer that they literally doctored it. They put in a different answer. So they deliberately interfered in that election. They would never have done that with Trump. He sued him, and we still don't know how much he's going to get, but he's going to get tens of millions, possibly even hundreds of millions of dollars as a result of that. That's how you do it. You hold them civilly responsible. Criminally, I don't see it. Marilyn Daggedy, I'm worried about AI. Is there any hope? Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I don't see. I mean, I'd have to probe what your worries are, MD. I mean, if you're worried about it, AI taking jobs and so forth, sure, that's legit. That's totally legit. We are entering into an intelligence age. So we're moving from the information age to the intelligence age, and that's key. And the sooner you guys get that, the better, you're going to be situated and prepared for that. And the intelligence age, it's an age where a lot of jobs are not going to be they're not going to be needed for physical human beings to do. I mean, if you're an Uber driver, go to Austin right now. I was in Austin not too long ago, and it seemed like every other car I saw on the road was one of the, I forget what they use. I don't think they use the Google one. I think that's more West Coast, right? Aren't they using Elon's new automatic autonomous cars? I mean, they're everywhere now. And it's just a matter of time. Again, for local pickups and drop-offs, you're not going to need a human to do that anymore. As a matter of fact, as I understand, the new Teslas that are coming out will actually park for you and then come back and pick you up. So you'll drive, or it'll drive you to wherever you want to go, say, a department store. It'll drop you off at the front, and then it will go and park. And then when you're done, you just hit a button and we'll come and pick you up at the front. So we're moving more and more into the intelligence age, and that's just inevitable. I mean, that's obviously was always going to happen. So the key is to make yourself irreplaceable. You learn how to utilize AI so as to maximize your value to others. If you learn how to utilize AI to maximize your own value, to help your intelligence turn into a super intelligence, to help your value turn into super value, that's how you're going to navigate very fruitfully, by the way, this new intelligence age, because the productivity is going to go through the roof. So the amount of economic growth that they're expecting in the intelligence age is unprecedented. Literally everyone can be a millionaire in the intelligence age. Michael Saylor of Bitcoin fame, that many of you I'm sure know of him. That's his argument. His argument is we are entering into an age where everyone should be a millionaire. You have access, and that crypto wealth enables everyone to have access to astonishing yields that just, again, we've never seen before, or that were only available to 19th and 20th century Vanderbilts, robber barons, you name it. Now, if you're talking about AI in terms of having a conscience, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. So was it Skynet or whatever, coming conscious of itself, and it now actually seeks to eradicate humans and that sort of stuff. I don't buy that. No, you have to have a very materialistic, atheistic conception of what it means to be human and of consciousness in order to arrive at what I think to be is a logically unsustainable position. They will always be machines. They will be highly intelligent, but they will never not be calculators. They will never develop a soul. They will never develop actual consciousness. And so I see an infinite gap between the machines that we create and the man behind the machine. Texas Turlinator, Dr. Turley, do you have your fingers crossed that the Gaza deal goes through on Monday? Hamas does not have any honor, integrity. Hamas and the PLO do not think as the Western mind thinks. Life has no intrinsic value to them. Hamas is a death cult. Their highest honor is to kill or be killed. No, I do. Just based on when I'm reading and the assessment that I'm getting from others, they do seem to think Hamas did finally get to the end of the rope, as it were, as did Israel. Israel's fighting a multi-front war here, and the IDF is getting exhausted by this as well. They're not, they're brilliant, but they're not superhuman. They do begin to suffer, and their economy is suffering, and everyone wants this war to end. It's been 2 years. They want it over. And Hamas and Israel looks like they're ready to finally bring about peace. So yeah, fingers crossed, no question. Anything can happen. Hamas is not known for keeping up their side of the bargain. Some others would argue Israel is, just as unreliable. Regardless, I mean, this is just a conflict that keeps going and going and going for centuries. And but it does look like this is unique in terms of the way all the power players involved, as well as Turkey, Qatar, and the United States. It looks like they're all there ready to bring a lasting peace here. And again, it's in everyone's benefit to do that. So, Robo Guy, what do you do when you're arguing with a leftist and they disregard any source you show, like X, and say it can be disproven just with a simple Google search, say it's a fact, but in an angry way, or say any response I make is a dog whistle? Well, I mean, there is, there is what we call a moving target, somebody or moving the goalpost. It's there are some people that just don't want to be convinced, and there's nothing you can do about that, none whatsoever. I remember talking with a fellow going way back who told me, tried to make the argument everything was relative. And I said, well, if everything's relative, then my opinion that you're full of dung is just as valid as your statement of what you just said to be true. In other words, if everything is relative, what you just said is every bit as false as it is true. And he said, yes, I believe that's true. And I said, no, you don't. No, you don't. And I could say everything that you're claiming to me you believe to be true is a lie, because it's all relative. There is no truth. There is no either or. So I was trying to point out to him that in his very argument, he was assuming an either or that he was trying to deny. He was arguing for this position over and against the non-relative position, but that's the opposite of relativism. Some things are just simply objective. They are either or. They can't be both. And he I kid you not, he just melted into absurdity. He's like, yep, nope, that's true too. And I said, no, but what you just said is false. Yep, that's right. That's true too. And so he just got into this utter, and I realized, oh, some people are willing to get so absurd just so they don't bend the knee to an obvious, what we call QED, an obvious win. The easiest way to deal with a person, however, who just simply don't take your sources seriously, Well, number one is you have to return the favor. So when they quote CNN and MSNBC, you have to laugh in their face as well, and then point out to them, there are ample studies out there that show that MSNBC, CNN have been factually wrong repeatedly, and always to the advantage of the Democrat, interestingly enough, whether it's the Russian collusion hoax or the Hunter Biden laptop, or Trump recommending everyone drink bleach, the hydroxychloroquine controversy with Joe Rogan. That was beyond, or was it ivermectin? I always get those two wrong. But when they were accusing him of taking horse dewormers when they knew there was a human version of it. On and on we can go. The Brett Kavanaugh rape allegations were treated seriously, even though they didn't have a shred of corroboration or confirmation, and they were also frankly absurd as well. The Covington Catholic school kids, that whole controversy, that was all wrong. It was all fabricated. It's not true. None of it. Kyle Rittenhouse being a white supremacist, again, it's all false. It's not true. And then, if you really want to push them, you can talk about George Floyd. The whole George Floyd narrative, the whole hands up, don't shoot. What was his name? Michael Brown. All of that was demonstrably false, and they pushed that. So you could go there and just do mutually assured destruction with your sources. But what I tend to do, is I try to find as much as I can their own sources confirming what we're saying. So I try to find a report on CNN that said, these charges against Tush James are pretty legit. I try to find something on New York Times. When New York Times has actually come out and said that the Democrats are facing a voter registration crisis. They're losing in all 30 states that track voter registration by party affiliation. They're losing in every single one. What do you say to that? That's not X propaganda. So what you do is you try to find as much information that backs your case on their sources. And now you could even turn around and say, I'm not a big fan of those sources, but even they're admitting, you see it. So it is an a fortiori argument. How much more than should we assume that what they're saying is true if they're crossing over with the very X crowd that you think is full of it? So if what X is arguing are the sources Fox or Breitbart are arguing are actually getting echoed by New York Times, CNN, you say that's pretty strong corroboration that we have something going on here. But I also would bring up the field of study of advocacy journalism. My namesake, Jonathan Turley, has done a lot of writing on advocacy journalism. And there's also been some stuff on progressive realism in the media and how it really took over during the Obama years. I mean, we have objective studies that show the media, the corporate media, is extremely biased. I mean, just look at the whole Ukraine coverage. I mean, there is no possible way of reading the New York Times or the Washington Post other than seeing Ukraine as good and Russia bad. But those are value systems that can't be verified per se. It's part of a narrative that they're pushing, and then they fit the facts into that narrative. Now, they may be right. But there is clearly a non-factual narrative going on that they align the facts with. So there you go. That's some tips there. Thanks, RoboGuy. MAGA 20 forever. Dr. Steve, last night I read an article about Dominion being bought by Liberty Vote. Yeah, they're going to sell it for scrap. An American-based company run by Republican Scott Leyendecker. They wrote that they're dedicated to restoring trust in our elections. To me, it seems like it could be huge. Can you comment on this development? Oh, yeah. No, as I from what I've read, and it's limited, limited. So, I only know so much per se, or this is that what the gist of it is that most of the Dominion ownership basically bailed. Most of the after November 5th. They were getting racked in the courts, particularly in, if I recall, it was a Fulton County court. I can't remember, somewhere in Georgia, that I think the judge even has yet to rule on it. But there was a lot of evidence coming out suggesting that they were compromised in terms of their security. And after Trump won, just a lot of the CEOs, a lot of the investors just bailed. They're like, forget this. We got no hope here. There were a lot of states that voted to stop using Dominion. A lot of counties voted. So they were just losing market share left and right. Now they sued, of course, Fox News and so forth. And Rupert Murdoch didn't feel like fighting it in court. He didn't like the discovery that was already coming out. But regardless, it just looks like they just don't have the infrastructure anymore to be a viable product. And so they're basically selling themselves as scrap. And yeah, like you said, now we have another company that's buying it. And either they're either going to try to, repurpose it, or they're going to try to revive it. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, ironically, here we are 5 years later, and Dominion is looks like it's being consigned to the ash heap of history in some way, shape, or form. Ironic. Rock Dog, Dr. Steve, Merrick Garland should be prosecuted as well. Do you think we'll see him in cuffs too? How about Fauci for crimes against humanity for his bioterrorist attack in 2020? I'm with you. I think we're going to see something on both of them, because again, Merrick Garland for Trump, that's obviously very personal. Merrick Garland is the one who ordered the raid on his home in Mar-a-Lago, which was the crossing of the Rubicon. We've never had that happen in the history of our republic. That's when we officially became Brazil, as it were. We became a third world nation at that moment. And no, I think he's definitely the case. We'll see with Fauci. I probably outside of Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tom Massey, I think Rand Paul is got to be perhaps the single most disappointing Republican on my list. So these are Republicans that I had a lot of faith in at one time, and they've completely obliterated that faith. Massey is just a lunatic at this point. Marjorie Taylor Greene is increasingly becoming the best friend of Democrats. I don't know what's the matter with those two. And then we've got Rand Paul, who talked a big game these last 3 years against Fauci, promising to hold him accountable. And of course he doesn't. So, in the end, it goes to kind of loop it in with a previous question here. Who needs Congress? I mean, what do they actually ever do other than raise money and get in front of cameras and fire off nasty tweets? I mean, so I think we may see it, but it's gonna have to be Congress actually doing something. But they've become buffoons at this point. Troublemaker adjacent. Do you think the rabid leftist running for governor in California can rehabilitate herself with voters? And what about Mr. Fantasy in Virginia? Isn't it time to call Democrats what they are, a party focused solely and gleefully on death? Well, all right, let me go in reverse. So Jay Jones looks like he's falling apart. We'll see. But things do not look very good for the Democrats right now in Virginia. Now, again, the Virginia deep state constituency of Nova in Northern Virginia are voting for their very survival. So they're going to come out in rabid record numbers. And that's going to be really, really hard for Winsome Sears, and it's going to be hard for the current Republican Attorney General. But let's just say Democrats are making it very hard for themselves to actually pull off a decisive victory at this point. We'll see how that goes. Same with Jack Ciattarelli. He's doing a great job against Mickey or Mikey Sherrill, however you call her name. Now, in terms of that lunatic in California, no, I think she's shot. I do. I think even Democrats are shocked at how ridiculous she is. And again, she is the epitome of what happens when you have a coddled woke sentiment and a coddled woke intellect. When you can't even entertain the possibility of having to argue for certain things, that you think excommunication and canceling is enough to shut down debate. Well, then when you're being forced to debate, particularly in the age of Trump, when wokeness now is no longer acceptable, wokeness is no longer the default position, even in blue states. And again, the Virginia gubernatorial hopeful found that out big time last night when she actually tried to turn the question about whether she will allow trans athletes back into sports in Virginia. She tried to dodge that question so pathetically everyone could see. Well, the answer is obviously yes, but even in a blue state, you can't admit to that. Now, I mean, she is the epitome of what happens when you shut down the basic faculty of reasoning. She can't reason anymore. So she just flips out. She's just an angry, fat, repulsive liberal. And she's literally everything that people hate about the Democrats at this point. So now I think she's shot. Again, it's California. You never know. But I saw in the latest polling, what is it? Steve, why am I forgetting his last name? Hines, the Republican, he's actually running first with like 30% support, something like that, with a bunch of Democrats behind him. So we'll see. Texas Drive, New York AG Sasquatch Big Tish has a 12-pound. I don't know what that is. Chicky, I don't know what that is. But yes, I can't read your hieroglyphics, but I think I agree with them. It's hilarious. Le Daniels, do you think they really will hold these guys accountable, or is this just a dog and pony show? Well, I know it's easy to be cynical. It's very easy to be cynical, and I mean that lit. I mean that's heartfelt, as it were. I mean we've been on the losing end for the last 300 years in many respects, just watching our traditions getting washed away by the advent of liberalism and emancipatory politics that flow out of the Enlightenment, the 18th century. So I get it, but those days are over, and so the world is moving in our direction. However, there's always going to be a lag from what preceded. Are we going to see? We'll see. We'll see. I don't think it's a dog and pony show. I think the Trump administration and Pam Bondi for sure are wielding a very strong prosecution against these people. But whether is it going to be an OJ trial? Is it going to be an OJ a jury? We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. It is Nova, Northern Virginia, and they're pretty disgusting partisans there. We'll see. But regardless, their lives are shot in many respects because now they're going to have to spend tons of money and tons of time and tons of resources fighting the U.S. federal government. And the U.S. federal government can keep slapping charges on them as long as it wants to. So this is not an enviable position to be in, for sure, if you're a Democrat. Mr. Brian, have you ever thought of debating on Uncensored? I forgot. What is Uncensored? I know Uncensored. Why am I... let me just look this up. My computer's so slow. Why are you so slow? Uncensored. Why is that? Uncensored show, right? Dude, you're getting me when my computer is not doing. Are you talking about Piers Morgan? Is that Piers? Oh, sure. I'd love doing Piers' show. I mean, be honest with you. To be honest with you, I find it a little odd and almost kind of like sideshow-esque that he brings in all these Americans and have Americans beating themselves up and attacking each other left and right. But that's, I mean, I like Piers a lot. Piers has, I just find him to be a very reasonable person, and he's certainly a big fan of Trump. He's certainly moved in our direction of late, and so I find him a kindred spirit in many respects. And it's interesting because I do tend to like the way the Brits do public discourse. I think it's actually, it can be very, very left wing, but I just find it a little less coarse than American interaction. But sure, no, of course, I'll always be open to anything like that. Sure. What do you think ICE has? Oh, I'm sorry, Lyd Daniels. What do you think ICE has not gone forward with Omar? Good question. I think they're gathering the evidence. And we'll have to see. Again, it would have to be ironclad evidence about what she did with her brother, for sure. And I don't know if it is. We'll have to see. I have not seen that, the actual ironclad evidence. What's the possibility, Nikki Apollo? What's the possibility the fifth French Republic collapse and a new sixth French Republic be born from continuous government collapses? Yeah. So the de Gaulle fifth, as I understand it, was designed specifically to keep the far right out of power. What they called the far right post World War II out of power. And so what they generally do is during a presidential election, they'll have the first round, multiple candidates. Then it'll generally come down to a so-called centrist, it's just an establishment candidate, and somebody either from the far right 9 times out of 10, maybe strangely far left, as we're like full-blown communists. And then everybody just teams up with the centrists in order to marginalize the so-called far right. Again, this is exactly what Macron did in the actual parliamentary elections for the French Assembly. The last one that they had, what was it, a year ago, in the last summer? It was right after, if I recall, it was right after the Olympics. And Marine Le Pen's National Rally was they were going to win the vast majority of seats, and then Macron got 200 or so of his own assembly candidates to drop out and turn around and endorse this far left coalition, and that was enough to be able to keep National Rally out of the majority. And so they engage in these shenanigans all the time. Again, it doesn't have a Democrat bone in its body. It's manipulative. It's deliberately disruptive of the democratic process. So the good news is now it seems to have reached its limit where, like you're saying brilliantly here, Nikki, that they can't function anymore. There is enough of the populist right in power to force votes of no confidence for any prime minister that Macron nominates. So it's just, I think so. I think it's just a matter of time before they're going to have to dissolve parliament. They're going to have to have elections again. We'll see if Macron interferes like he did last time, or if he just allows the process to play itself out. I mean, he doesn't matter for him. He can retire, and he's got his globalist millions. So he's a big banker and all. So, but I think it's just a matter of time before National Rally takes over, and Eric Zemmour's party would join in, and you would have an overwhelming nationalist populist coalition in France. And I would see that as a sixth republic. That because again, the Fifth Republic was designed to make sure that never happened. It would to make sure that something like National Rally back in the day, National Front, would ever come to power. And if they've come to power, then that Fifth Republic rationale has imploded. So I think you're absolutely right. And I enjoyed how Trump spanked Mark Carney in the White House. His comments about transgenderism and wokeism were hilarious, given Carney's daughter identifies as binary. Do you think Trump knew that or not? By the way, weakling Carney came back with nothing for Canada. You know, I hear you. And I was when I was on the bus tour of Scotland, about 40% of the bus was from Canada. And we have virtually every night we had dinner, sitting at a table with somebody on the bus. Like 9 times out of 10, it was my neighbors in the Great White North. Now, again, you know, most of them you could tell were a bit Libby, but I did meet a couple that were wonderful. They hated Carney, and so we had a great chat, great time together. I don't know if Trump knew that or not. Maybe he did. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't, because I don't think Trump particularly cares. You know, he is a live and let live kind of person at a personal level. That does not translate into national policy. National policy, he's a thoroughgoing civilizationalist traditionalist, because those are the policies that enable your civilization to flourish. So he's absolutely pro-family values there, very pro-life. You know, he's helped get rid, finally overturning our Roe v. Wade. Remember, we're the only country that I know of that, quote, resolved the abortion issue through the courts, as opposed to some kind of national referendum or through a democratic process. So it was very good to overturn that, because it was incredibly divisive. And yeah, I think Trump is still feeling out Carney a little bit. I think Carney's still trying to feel out Trump. They'll eventually come to they'll eventually come to some kind of agreement. But Carney may be trying to wait out Trump over the next 3.5 years, hoping that Gavin Newsom will be president. Good luck on that, by the way. Coastal elites don't do very well, whether they're from New England or California. They haven't done very well since the last 40 years, or since Reagan, and he wasn't an elite. He was a populist. So, but certainly Kamala didn't do very well, being a Californian. I think if anything, Newsom will do even worse, especially given the shift towards the right in voter registrations. So, Rebel Squirrel, Dr. Steve, how many states and cities do you think could be affected by the Insurrection Act if and when Trump invokes it to counter left resistance to federal law enforcement efforts? Well, right now I see two definitely in the horizon: Chicago and Portland. That's what it's, and make no mistake, he's doing it because judges continued to get in the way, federal judges. Now they're more or less ignoring it, but you know, he is concerned that it can at some point hamper his efforts at quelling the lawlessness and the anarchy in Portland and Chicago. Boston now is breaking out with severe chaos. Again, this kind of anarchy on the streets, largely because of their insane, nutty, woke mayor. So I see 3 cities right now in his purview if we include Boston. I don't include cities like Memphis, and so because the mayor there is getting I think it's a her, right? Is it a her? I can't. Her arm, twisted behind her back, in order to, or it might be he, to force to request the National Guard troops to bring order to Memphis. Again, I find it interesting the way Trump is doing it. I would have thought you start with red states and get all of their blue swamps, their blue patches in their urban areas cleaned up, and then you go for the blue states. It was fascinating. Trump is going straight for blue states, with Portland and Chicago. But I think because also he saw his ICE agents being coming under siege there. So there is this natural impulse he seems to have to defend. And so that's what I think he's doing. But there you go. I see 3 right away. We'll see. It'll grow more because you'll have left-wing interest groups relocating and trying to find new centers outside of Portland and Chicago and Boston. Nikki, what's the possibility? We already did that one, Josh. RoboGuy, should I give up convincing family members why I can't be left? My sister's a leftist who thinks there's something wrong with me and I can't take it anymore. Just let it burn if they won't learn. I love that, RoboGuy. Just let it burn if they won't learn. Yeah. RoboGuy, my advice with family, this is my advice, take it or leave it, is you want to focus on the relationship. You don't want to focus on being right. You want to focus on the relationship. Don't focus on being right. They're your family. They're the people God gave to you to literally birth you and bury you. Family it's the social unit whereby we learn to be loyal to those we didn't choose but chose us. Family is that cultural unit that teaches us that we are morally obligated to defend and to be loyal to those we did not personally choose in our lives. Now, with marriage, it's a bridge. You get a both and, as it were. You get to choose in our non-arranged marriage culture. You get to choose, but once chosen, you're supposed to stick it through as best you can. I mean, things happen, but there is an obligatory element there after the choice. But family in general are people you're with and you're loyal to and that you love, irrespective of whether you agree with them. That's not generally the case with friends. It's not even generally the case with a spouse. But with the larger family, you're held together by love, not by agreement. So hold on to that. Make the relationship primary and being right way, way, way secondary. Okay. If not tertiary. I mean, really push it out there. To be honest with you, I generally don't speak politics with my family. All my family knows what I do. I have a lot of members of my family, thank God, who are with me politically, and a lot who have changed over the years, particularly my sisters. They're very comfortable with my politics. Let's just put it that way. They may not be like 100% there, no question, and nobody has to be, but they're very, very comfortable. But I have family members that are not. I have family members who are not, and I never bring up politics around them. I'll bring up anything, if anything, again, I try to do is I try to think, what are they interested in? What's their passions? And let me enter into that and let me, and then if they get political, you know what? I just try to listen. I do. I don't get upset. We're winning. Why would I get upset? They're talking politics because they know they're losing and they feel panicked. They feel frantic over it. They feel like they completely lost control, particularly boomers. Sorry, I'm an Xer, I'm not a boomer. But left-wing boomers just see this whole post-World War II world that the only world they've ever known shattering right before their very eyes, and they don't know how to handle it. So I let them. Now, if they're trying to compel agreement from me, don't you think that's right? I might say, well, I'd have to consider that. I'd have to think of. There is another side to that. You do know what I do for a living, right? I try to find ways of just sort of, deflating the rising tension by just focusing on the relationship. Because in the end, I think that's what God requires of us to do. He didn't give us Republicans as family members. He gave us family members as family members, and focus on that. Don't, especially with Thanksgiving coming up, Christmas, focus on anything and everything you can do to make them smile and to make them just in awe of being around you. Make the best sense of self, of yourself, come out so as to bring out the best sense of self for them. And I've found people on the left are very comfortable with me when I do that. I mean, close, family members, they're very comfortable. They're very comfortable when they realize that I'm not this. I don't require everybody else to think the way I do. I honestly don't. I think we're on the right side, and I think proclaiming it is enough, and showing it and demonstrating it is enough to persuade. And if you're not persuaded, that's cool. It's between you and, God and the world and your own experience of it. I'm just tracking with where the world is going, and it's going our direction. It's reawakening a civilizationalist age. They don't know how to handle it. They get really upset. Okay, deal with it. It's cool. No biggie. If you're with friends, again, not so much family or even family, and they really want to chat and they really want to talk, which I've had, go for it. Go have the conversations. But, channel your inner Turley talker and explain to them that you just think that that the world does move in accordance with times and epochs, and the epoch of liberalism, many scholars believe, is coming to an end. So the world is kind of breaking up away from the kind of one-size-fits-all liberal globalism, human rights, LGBT, all that sort of stuff. Fine. If you're into that, fine. But most populations really don't care about LGBT flags. They care about their ethnic flags, their national flags, their regional flags, their civilizational flags. See, the LGBT flag isn't specific to any nation, culture, custom, tradition, whereas the Russian flag is, the Armenian flag is, the Turkish flag is, the Indian flag is, and the United States flag is. So more and more people are going back. I mean, I like explaining it to people, saying, look, LGBT identity, race identity, gender identity, those aren't the only identities that are flourishing today. Increasingly, it's religious identity, it's national identity, it's tribal identity, it's traditionalist identity, it's civilizational identity. So yes, we're moving away from ideology to an age of identity. Unfortunately, it's not liberal identity politics that's winning the day. It's much more nationalist, traditionalist politics that are winning the day. So there you go. William O'Toole, who will the DOJ and FBI turn? Bolton, McCabe, Brennan, Comey. I personally think it's Bolton. I think Bolton's a snake by his very nature. I think Comey's going to keep his mouth shut. I don't know enough about McCabe or Brennan, but I think Bolton's the snake, and I think Bolton will. I have a very good feeling that he is going to sing like a canary, and he's going to direct everyone to the hidden doors, shall we say, in the swamp and in the deep state. We'll see, though. Old combat vet. As long as the Democrats control the voter rolls, have a supply of blank mail-in ballots, and count the votes, they will hold power. No, they won't. No, they won't. Don't do. Why do you blackpill, dude? Old combat vet. I love you, man, but no, they won't. How do you say that? Did we have all the power on November 5th? No, we just had all the votes, and we overwhelmed them. We overwhelmed them with our mail-in ballot structure. We overwhelmed them with our ballot harvesting, with our get out the vote campaigns. Now, I guess you could say then, in a sense, we controlled it. But no, your so-called blank mail-in ballots worked in November of 2020. Sure, they don't work anymore. There's way too many election security measures that have been taken and legislation passed. They don't control the voter rolls. You're wrong on that. Actually, the federal government, in many respects, controls the voter rolls, because in order for you to get federal money, you have to purge your voter rolls. So hence 3.1 million people have been purged from California's voter rolls. You want to guess how many votes Kamala won by? 3.2 million in California. So, I don't know what you're saying about that. I mean, voter registration and then the mail-in ballots, as you're seeing it right now in Virginia and New Jersey, mail-in ballot requests are directly connected to objectively verified voters. So, you could look, this worked in 2021 and 2022. Don't work no more. I'm sorry. You're a dinosaur. You're Jurassic. Sorry, man. I don't get it. Why you even think. I get it in that you have been conditioned to lose. Just as many of us have. We've been conditioned to lose. Okay? You're not a loser anymore. You're on the winning team. So get on it. Stop it with that kind of dooming. Ridiculous. You're more than that, old combat vet. You are more than that. If you want to be Denethor and pour oil on yourself and light yourself on fire and jump off the cliff, have at it, man. Have at it. But if you want to be Aragorn, brandish your sword, and for Charlie, let's go. Enough of this nonsense. Joker, you ready to buy your condo in Gaza? my Riviera of the Middle East, the condo, yeah. Not quite. Not yet. Not yet. I am, after all, an armchair commentator. That's right. Love it. Brian, my good friend. And sorry, dude, about the Phillies last night and Eagles and Flyers, apparently. Josh is our moderator here, is another Philly guy. Do you know how many folks have been fired during the government shutdown? Do we know specific programs or agencies that have been eliminated? Do you have a sense about how long the shutdown will last? And how can Upchuck Schumer say that the Democrats are doing great under that was a slip of the tongue, was it not? Talk about a stupid Freudian slip. Let me go. Let me go top bottom. So the last number I heard was 300,000. That they're saying that number will be by January 1st, if I recall. So we get 300,000, same amount that Clinton and Gore were able to clean house with, and Trump's just done it his first year. So pretty impressive stuff. That's how many have been fired, or, well, we say fired in the sense that the positions have been permanently eliminated thus far. So a lot of these people did the Doge early retirement payouts that they got. And then what was it on September 30th? I think we saw 110,000, was slightly over 100,000, all joining in with the 50 or 60,000 that had already taken their early retirement, their early leave. And then there's another, if I recall, upwards of something like 100,000 that Trump has already X'd. So they'll be gone, but 300,000. Specific programs or agencies that have been eliminated. I mean, just, the basic ones that come to mind, obviously the USAID, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, that's now officially gone. That would be good. I should get a list. I should make a note of that. I get a list of all agencies that have been eliminated. I'll make a note of that, Brian. How long this shutdown will last? They're predicting 3 weeks at this point, total 3 weeks. Apparently, they've got another No Kings rally in a couple of weeks, or a week. And then a word on the street in D.C. is it's going to dissipate shortly thereafter, because the Democrats do, right? They've got their internal polling, and they're showing this is not helping them at all. But they've got nothing to lose. They're completely desperate. So they know they're not going to win back the Senate. They know they're not going to have executive power, at least for the next 3 years. They're hoping to get back the House, but as you know, with the redistricting, and we're now getting word that as of next week, they're going to re-argue, which generally is a sign that the Supreme Court is going to overturn a precedent. They're going to re-argue the Voting Rights Act, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, that's been ironically exploited to do precisely what it claims doesn't do, which is discriminate against voters on the basis of their race for the purpose of to prevent vote dilution. Apparently, again, I just can't even believe these arguments. The more I research, the more I just scratch my head and just say, again, you just had to have this liberal fog that just infested people's perspectives. But bottom line, minority complainants, plaintiffs argued successfully that white voters dilute their vote. They actually made the argument successfully. So they were ordered to draw majority minority districts mostly in southern deep red states. Those, I believe there are 19 districts, that's what Politico said, are going to get overturned overnight, and they'll all become red overnight as a result of this decision. So I just think the Democrats are they're just desperate at this point. They don't even see themselves winning back the House, because on average, you know, the party out of White House power wins about 20, 25 seats. I've even seen upwards of 30 seats on average. If I think it's 30 seats if the incumbent president is underwater, like under 45%, maybe around 40% approval, generally speaking. Again, we found out the hard way with our low propensity voters back in 2022. They don't necessarily come out, the working class voter in the rural areas don't necessarily come out to vote en masse like they vote for Trump in 2016 or 2020. We just found out they tended to stay home. So we didn't get much of a majority. But that said, if we combine the redistricting seats pickup total with all the states, including your great Florida, 2 to 3 in Florida, some are saying maybe even 5, just to offset Newsom because your governor Ron DeSantis hates Newsom so much. But if you combine that with the 19 seats we're expected to pick up with the result of this overturning of the VRA, we're talking 30 seats. It's a net 30 seats. So we don't have to flip a single seat. I mean, it's insane. I mean, we're going to be sitting pretty at 230, 235 seats, just guaranteed, as it were. Most seats are not swing seats. So I just think they feel they need some talking points for the No Kings rally, and then after that, word on the street is they're gonna try to declare some victory and vote it in the Senate. So 3 weeks or so. How can Chuck Schumer say? Yeah, the Dems are doing great. Chuck Schumer does, Brian, exactly what he always does. He just lies. That's all he does. He just lies. And then it was a very dumb thing, the way he put it, that every day gets better for us. I mean, it made it sound like they are profiting off of the woes and the pains of the electorate. It was a disaster. The legacy media is doing everything they can to spin it. It's not going to work. He is, keep in mind, Chuck Schumer is objectively, he has the lowest approval of anyone in Congress. He is the most unpopular person in Congress. He's a disaster, public relations disaster. Pepe, Dr. Steve, are we going to see Brandon Johnson or Pritzker prosecuted under the Insurrection Act? So all bets are off with the Insurrection Act. That's the thing to keep in mind. All bets are off with declaring Antifa a terrorist organization. All bets are off with the Insurrection Act. If the Insurrection Act is invoked, Trump could go anywhere he wants with it. And again, it's non-judiciable. It can't be reviewed by a court. It is in effect more or less Trump declaring war against a faction of the population that he, as commander in chief, believes is attempting to overturn the United States of America. And he has every right to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So if he, and that's the Insurrection Act, when all said and done, how do you fight against domestic enemies? That's insurrection. So last time it was used was in 1991 or 92, I forget. That was 92 with the LA riots after the Rodney King police acquittal. But it's been used upwards of 30 times. Lincoln used it several times, obviously. So, yeah. And I think we are in, 1860s like territory, late 50s, 60s territory here, just in terms of how divided we are. So I don't know what we're going to see with Johnson and Pritzker, but it won't be good. And Trump will be justified in using that power, and he will use that power, and every single Republican will champion it. And I think a good portion of independents as well. Rebel Guy, lighter note. What do you like to do on Halloween? Oh, this Halloween, I plan to be spending it with my family up in Connecticut, actually. My sister and my mom's birthdays right around that time. My sister goes all out in Halloween. She's amazing. This is the first Halloween we spent together in a while. Oh, I do. I just like watching scary movies. I have a very robust theology of horror. I think a good horror movie shows that evil is beyond our control. That evil actually penetrates our own hearts. There's not a lot of difference between us and the monsters. And so something outside of us has to come in to intervene, to resolve that evil. So I do like movies like The Exorcist, 1973 Exorcist, where God has to intervene. Michael the Archangel has to intervene to slay the demonic and the satanic. So, and I also see Halloween as a time where we get to celebrate the fact that we have conquered the demons. We need not fear the dark any longer. So that's there you go. I tend to just enjoy movies. We give out candy and stuff like that if we're around, and the like. And I do enjoy just the vibe of October. I grew up in Connecticut and around, very haunted houses and all that sort of stuff. So I dig it a lot. Salem. We spent a lot of time in Salem. Thank you very much, Pale Rider. Very, very appreciated. Casparius, we have to consider every election like beat the steal. Absolutely, no matter what. Get out votes like we'll lose. Never underestimate Democrats to pull shenanigans. Absolutely. No question about it. No question. I just don't want us to engage in doomerism and blackpilling. What's the point if they control everything? That because they don't. They don't control anything anymore. But absolutely, you have to get out there and you have to assume that your voters are low propensity voters. Now, the good news is we're seeing very, very good vote turnout in Virginia and New Jersey. Whether it's enough in those two solidly blue states is yet to be seen. But we're seeing very, very good get out the vote, especially with Jack Ciattarelli in New Jersey. Very excited. Cordius, we're hearing or reading that China is building their own Panama Canal in South America. Is America going to fight that fight? We need the political will to do this, and Trump is the only person now who would do it. And China and farmlands issue. Well, China's Belt and Road Initiative is global by definition. I don't think it's globalist, but it's global. I don't know about them building their own Panama Canal. I haven't caught up with that. I'll take a look at that, Cordius. Would we fight that? I don't know. That's a good question. Trump certainly fought China exercising inordinate control over the Panama Canal by virtue of an appeasing Panamanian government. Yeah, he pushed back on that big time. He even said, if we need to, we're gonna take that Panama Canal back. But that said, I don't know if we would challenge China building another one. We just wanted to make sure we controlled ours. But I wouldn't doubt, if that's the case, that we beefed up our forces down below. Yeah, farmlands. Yeah, no, definitely. And there are a lot of particularly red states, that are passing legislation right now that are preventing China from purchasing up, buying up farmlands and so forth. Not necessarily California, not necessarily the Palisades, not necessarily Hawaii and Malibu. You know, those places are not Malibu, Maui. Those places are seem to be allowing the Black Rocks and Chinese corporations to buy up as much as they want. But red states, I don't think will allow it. AJ, martial law needs to be enacted. A lot of people think it does. And that's in effect what the Insurrection Act is. It's the closest thing we have, as I understand it, to viable, full-out martial law. And that's it, gang. All right, so keep an eye for your back porch, Professor. I'll be doing a bunch of videos from my back porch over the weekend as breaking news comes out. And until then, gang, have a wonderful weekend, and love seeing you all throughout the weekend in our videos. God bless, gang. Take care.